Whirlpool, Kohl's, CBS. I didn't know they still made money, but apparently they do. The Gap. Sara Lee. We also have J.C. Penney and Halliburton. Now, all of those companies create clothing and appliances and cheesecake. So I know what they do. These guys are making refrigerators. What is it that George Soros is creating? They make refrigerators and dishwashers. George Soros makes... wait a minute. Nothing. George Soros makes bets. Wow. We have got to get this guy to Vegas. By the way, ADD moment here. All of Soros' incomes comes from capital gains. That means he's paying exactly the same tax rate as, yes,
evil Mitt Romney. Call Mitt Romney's office and tell him, we don't want any of your kind around here.
I guarantee you that the man who has made $17 billion in the past few years paid less in percentage than his own secretary. But is the media saying anything about that? Mitt Romney, as far as I know, doesn't make the kind of money that George Soros does, and at least he doesn't make it the way George Soros does by trying to invest in the failure of entire countries and their currency. Then grab the phone and dial up his buddies in the governments of said countries, and then call up the heads of giant global banks and then other influential economic leaders and give all of them an earful of advice on how to solve the situation. Now, I may be going out on a limb here, but that kind of sounds like a conflict of interest. It seems to be, however, a routine pattern for George Soros. For instance, let me give you a couple things. Light Squared, the investment. Soros invests through hedge funds millions of dollars into Light Squared. Now, Light Squared, this is a communication company. What are they trying to do? Well, they're just trying to communicate. That's all they're trying to do. They are trying to establish another wireless broadband network. Now, here's the problem with Light Squared. An Air Force general steps to the plate. His name is William Shelton, and he says this new network, just even testing it, is going to interfere with the military GPS systems. Well, this poses a problem, doesn't it? I mean, for George Soros. But it poses a bigger problem to us. Because if the general is right, then our GPS for our smart bombs and everything else might be temporarily interrupted. It might be a danger. It's a danger to our national security. So what happens? 4 George Soros-funded organizations start lobbying on behalf of Light Squared. Then the White House pressures the general into changing his prepared testimony to downplay his concerns. That doesn't sound good. Second example, Petrobras. We told you about this at Fox. The Petrobras investment. Soros invests $811 million into Petrobras. This is the government-run Brazilian oil company. Okay, what happens? Well, the Obama administration, strangely, on their own, coincidence of coincidence, decides to slap a moratorium on offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. But, here's the weird part. They give the green light and even issue billions in loans to Petrobras in order to do some more offshore drilling deeper than what they were doing in the Gulf. When we exposed this on Fox, Soros sold his Petrobras shares. He later brought them back and invested in the company again. Because we don't pay attention, America loses and George Soros gains. That seems to be the general pattern with George Soros. George Soros lines his pockets with billions of dollars while the working person suffers. Yet no one is even talking about him in the media. No one is even willing to call him by name. They're not even willing to call him out on extremely questionable practices of betting on currencies while trying to influence them and their policies at the same time. Let me give you another example. Do you have that story? This was just handed me right before we went on. This just broke like 2 minutes before we went on. Big picture of George Soros. Soros may benefit from the White House natural gas proposal. No. Come on. Boy, Barack Obama and George Soros are the luckiest guy in the world. Or if you want to say it's all ethical, the most unlucky, because it sure looks bad. But nobody's looking into it. Soros, billionaire, investor, major backer of President Obama, stands to reap a windfall from the passage of legislation promoting a natural gas-powered vehicle. The White House unveiled a proposal on Thursday that would do just that. Blah, 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 blah. And guess who's a big supporter of that? George Soros. Guess who's a big investor in that? George Soros. Why isn't anybody looking into this? Why isn't anybody even talking about the history? Because he's done this before. We told you about the pattern. He gets all of his ducks in the row. He influences the policymakers. Then he waits for the right time to hit the media circuit and help nudge the currency he's betting against off the cliff. Watch.
What he does is, of course, George Soros never collapsed currency. What? I was just happened to be there in the crime scene. What? All 4 times. All I did was I wrote one of the things I did was I just wrote an op-ed piece right before the crash of all 4 currencies, and I said, I don't think I believe in this currency anymore in the direction of what they're doing, and so I'm going to sell. And then the world panics. I can't help if the world panics. You watch for that little op-ed piece from spooky George Soros.
Well, the world is on the edge, and last night the currencies started to tube in Europe. Soros has been uncharacteristically all over the news recently. I mean, here's a guy who's like, I want to go and just leave me in a nursing home and don't come visit me. I just want to disappear. And then all of a sudden he's everywhere. And it's what he's saying that is so bothersome. He's saying what I'm saying. A year ago, he said that people who listen to Glenn Beck and listen that we're going to fly off a cliff, he said I was being dangerous. Now he's saying almost verbatim, well, George, listen, hey, buddy, come here, let's have a chat. I don't know how you got so lucky, because that must be luck. If you're this stupid, if you couldn't see this coming, but I did, you should hire me. Maybe I could help you with some of your investments. But then again, man, you don't see stuff like this coming. And yet you made how many billions last year during the collapse? That's odd, isn't it?